LeighTDickey.com.
What's going on, everybody? Leigh Dickey here. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast, and a new episode within the Star Wars miniseries right here on the Beats and Speaks podcast. Today, this week, I am joined by certified YouTube legend John Lester, aka Gamester81, aka NEStalgiaholic. That's NEStalgiaholic. And most importantly, since this is a new episode in the Star Wars miniseries, Star Wars Nut 77. It was a real pleasure to have John on the show. We talk everything and anything Star Wars, from his favorite films in the franchise, how he became a fan of the Lucasfilm giant, what he thinks of the Disney takeover, what is upcoming on each of his YouTube channels, specifically Star Wars Nut 77. It was a lot of fun to have John on the show. You can follow John Lester, aka Gamester81, at Gamester81.com. I will post as many links as I can find to each of his YouTube channels and his social medias down in the description below. So check all that out at Gamester81.com. John, thank you once again for coming on the show, coming on the Beats and Speaks podcast to talk all things Star Wars and all things the Lucasfilm, now Disney giant. And it was a lot of fun. And if you ever want to come back and do another episode, of course, there is always a spot for you here. There's always a spot available, and you are always welcome. But now that you know a bit about my guest, John Lester, aka Gamester81, aka NEStalgiaholic, aka Star Wars Nut 77, I'm going to tell you where you can find me, yours truly, Leigh Dickey, and the Beats and Speaks podcast. Of course, the Beats and Speaks podcast releases new episodes every single Friday at midnight Eastern Time on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, my official website, LeighTDickey.com, and we're also on YouTube as well under Leigh Dickey TV, so subscribe to us there. Please do rate us 5 stars and comment as well, because that helps us climb in the rankings, which helps us produce new content, which means you guys get new episodes and this show continues. I enjoy thoroughly producing content for the show and giving you guys episodes, whether they're solo or interviews. I just enjoy doing this show, so please do like, comment, share, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars on your favorite podcast app and platform of choice. You can also leave reviews on your favorite podcast app and player of choice, as well as my official Facebook page, which is facebook.com/LeighTDickey. Leave reviews as well on the official Beats and Speaks podcast landing page on my official website, LeighTDickey.com, and I will feature them right here on the Beats and Speaks podcast, as well as right there front and center on my official website, LeighTDickey.com. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast, please do email me at LeighTDickey, that's LeighTDickey at gmail.com, and we can set something up and go from there, so you and I can have a good old-fashioned conversation, and you can find yourself and hear yourself on a future episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. Now that all the housekeeping is out of the way, you know where to find my guest, John Lester. You know where to find me, Leigh Dickey, and the Beats and Speaks podcast. Let's get into the real main event. Let's get into the real salt and pepper of this episode. My interview with John Lester, aka Gamester81, aka NEStalgiaholic, and most importantly, because we're talking everything Star Wars, aka Star Wars Nut 77, right here on the Beats and Speaks podcast.
Guys, what's up? This is John, aka Gamester81 and Star Wars Nut 77. You are listening to the Beats and Speaks podcast with Leigh Dickey.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and anyone else within earshot of the sound of my annoying voice, I am joined today, luckily enough, by a YouTube legend. He is Gamester81, he is NEStalgiaholic, and most importantly, because we're continuing the Star Wars miniseries right here on the Beats and Speaks podcast, and of course I am your host, Leigh Dickey, but most importantly, my guest is Gamester81, NEStalgiaholic. But because this is a continuation of the Star Wars miniseries, he is Star Wars Nut 77 YouTube legend. I give to you, folks, John Lester. John,
hey,
how are you?
Leigh, thank you so much for having me, man. I appreciate the kind words. I wouldn't quite call myself a legend, but I do appreciate having me, man, for sure. Thank you. I'm doing good.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to do the show, and I've wanted to have you on the show for a while. I would consider you a legend. I mean, I remember back in the day, not that I'm trying to age you at all, but I think you were one of the first channels, or at least your Gamester81 channel was one of the first channels I came across when YouTube was still sort of in diapers, if you will.
Right. Yeah. I've been doing YouTube since, I think, 90. I created my Star Wars channel back in 98. So, gosh, man, 11, a while ago, right? I mean, it's been some time. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, that would have been like 2008 or something like that, right?
Yeah, well, no, I stand corrected. No, it wasn't that long ago. It was, I have to look. It was a couple years before. It was about 12 years ago. So whatever that is, yeah.
So yeah,
but, it's been some time. It's been a journey.
So yeah, I mean, you've been on YouTube for a while, and you're a big Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
And since we're here to talk Star Wars, why don't you basically tell my audience a bit about you and where your fandom of Star Wars kind of began?
Well, I have two older brothers. I am 38. So I have two older brothers, and I got kind of hand-me-down to a lot of their Star Wars figures growing up, right? We'd play Star Wars figures, and I remember I was never fortunate enough to see the original movie in the theaters. However, I do remember seeing when they came out in 90, I think it was 97 when they were released in theaters, they came out. But I remember when my mom came home one year, and I forget what year it was, but she brought home the VHS tapes of Star Wars from like Costco back in the day, right? So she brought those home, and I remember just falling in love with it and just being blown away at just the special effects. And this is pre-special edition, right? So just being blown away at the story and just relating with the characters and then, of course, the toys and the memorabilia that came along with it. So, yeah, that's kind of how I got into Star Wars.
Is there a moment in the films that really stuck out to you? Like, do you have a favorite film within any of the franchise?
It's changed over the years. I'd say growing up, my favorite film was Return of the Jedi, just because I like the story dynamic with Darth Vader turning good again. Spoiler alert for those who haven't seen it. I'm sure most of you have seen it. But yeah, so Darth Vader, that's a really cool story dynamic. I definitely like Return of the Jedi. But now I'd say Empire Strikes Back is my favorite. You know, of course, the prequels, and there's mixed reviews on the prequels, of course. And a lot of people, you talk to a lot of Star Wars fans my age anyway, they don't really like Episode 1 or anything like that. I don't mind Episode 1, to be honest. It's not terrible. Not fantastic either. I mean, Darth Maul is one of my favorite characters. I like Qui-Gon, and obviously Jar Jar is kind of annoying. But, you know, looking back at that film when it came out, I remember I have fond memories of waiting in line. I was working at Taco Bell back in the day when that movie came out. So remember.
So they were running a whole bunch of promotions for it.
Oh yeah, they were doing the promotion, right? The toys and the cups and the toppers and all that. And I still have quite a few of the Force coins or whatever they call them. Memorabilia stuff. I have a huge banner that they were going to throw away. I just snagged. That was like a big Star Wars promotional banner for Taco Bell. I still have that. So, but I'd say my least favorite would probably be Episode 2. Attack of the Clones. There's parts of it that are okay, like the Yoda fight scene's okay, but the love story kind of lost me a little bit on all that. I don't mind the new ones, Episode 8 and 9, and a lot of people were kind of up in arms about. I'm sorry, 7, 8, 9's obviously not out yet. I don't mind. A lot of people didn't like 8 very much. I don't know if Leigh, have you seen Episode 8?
I have barely seen any of the films. I mean, I have.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much, when it comes to going to see them in theaters, I might actually break the streak and go see The Rise of Skywalker when it comes out. I don't know. But, I was never a big fan. I was a bigger Star Trek fan than I am a Star Wars fan.
Yeah. I'm a big Star Trekkie as well. I'm a Trekkie. I've seen every episode of Star Trek, to be honest. I'm super excited for Picard when that comes out.
Yeah.
Next month. I'm super stoked for that. But I know this is a Star Wars episode, so we'll stick to Star Wars. But no, I'm a big fan of the new ones as well. I didn't mind 8 as much, and a lot of people were kind of up in arms about it and the story. And the way I look at it is nothing's going to be good as the original movies, and I think a lot of people go into watching the new Star Wars movies thinking it's going to be the next Empire Strikes Back, and unfortunately you can't live up to that expectation. So I kind of go into the movies like, hey, is it going to be entertaining? Which I feel like they are. So yeah.
I mean, well, now that with the advent of Disney Plus, I mean, I will probably and since
they have no excuse.
I have no excuse, I'll go back and watch them. I mean, I could tell you a quick story. I think it was either episode 1 or Attack of the Clones, but I think I was 10 when episode 1 came out, and then 13 I think when episode 2 came out. But I remember my sister had come up to visit. I live in Toronto, Canada, so my sister had come up to visit my dad and my mom and I. So, and she's a big Star Wars fan. Like, she's into that whole thing. Sure. And I'm just was never into it. And I'm still, now that I'm like 30, I'm gaining an appreciation, but I wouldn't run to the theater. But with, the Rise of Skywalker, I might break that streak. She had come up and she wanted to see whatever the Star Wars film that came out at the time was, and I didn't. So my mom and I had gone to see whatever movie we saw, and my dad and my sister went to see whatever Star Wars film that was. So the movie that my mom and I were in, and I'm going to out this kind of podcast like somewhere between 17 and 20 years later, so hopefully he doesn't find out who I am and knock on my door. But our movie, like the movie that my mom and I were in, ran short. Like, it finished early. It was a shorter film because Star Wars, they tend to run
2 hours plus,
2.5, 3 hours or a year.
Sure.
So our movie had finished, and we get out of the auditorium that we're in, and we can't find my sister and my dad. So my mom and I, we go up to this attendant in the theater, and we say, look, I'm looking for, my mom was, I'm looking for my husband and, his daughter, but we can't find them. So the attendant goes, well, I'm not supposed to do this, but if you don't tell anybody, you can go ahead and go in there. And I think I caught like the last 30 to 45 minutes of Star Wars or whatever film that was.
Okay.
And I remember because I think my mom had spotted them, like my dad and sister.
Sure.
And then I think my sister looked over and she wasn't happy, and I was like, oh, well, here we go. Like, we get a free, the last like 30 to 45 minutes of the movie, and I'm sure they just wanted to enjoy that by themselves, but it was like, I'm a kid at that point. What do I do? Like, mom says, go here. I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll go. Like, at that point, I'm just like, I don't care. We'll just do it.
Right.
But even then, like, for the last 30 to 45 minutes, I don't remember much of the film, but I do remember, like, the fact that it was, like, a free, basically, 30 to 45 minute viewing.
What year was it? Do you know what year?
I think it was either 99 or 2002, so it was either Attack of the Clones or the Phantom Menace. I can't remember which one.
Right, okay.
But it was one of those two. I just remember, my sister looking over and not being happy. My mom's just like, well, okay, let's just find empty seats. We know where they are. I'm like, yeah, all right, fine. If I'm going to enjoy a movie for like a free 30 to 45 minute viewing of whatever Star Wars film this is, I'm just going to soak it in as much as I can. And I think that story got back to my dad's brothers, and one of them bought, I think it was episode 1, more than likely, but he had bought episode 1 on VHS back when it came out, and I think it was one of the special editions, and he mailed it. It was like a Christmas present, and to be honest with you, it took me forever to open it. I don't know what it was. I was just never into like Star Wars in itself, but I remember it took me forever to open like the VHS box of episode 1. Like, it was in a shrink wrap for years. I'm not kidding.
That's funny. Yeah, you should definitely see it. I mean, it's not terrible. The prequels to me aren't as good as the original movies, but I mean, you're gonna have to take them at their own as their own storyboard,
Yeah, you kind of take them with their own grain of salt these days, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So, we know where Star Wars and the fandom started for you. What do you think of the Disney takeover?
What's that?
How do you feel about the Disney takeover?
Mixed reviews. I mean, I think I know that for a while they're going to pump out a movie every year, right? They've done that for the past 6 years, but they're going to slow down with the movies. It sounds like after episode 9, at least for a couple of years.
Which I think they really should do.
What's that?
I think they really should do that because they're pumping out like every 9 months.
Well, it's the same thing with the Marvel movies. They're kind of getting overkill with the Marvel movies too, So like every 6 months you get a new Marvel movie practically.
Yeah.
But I think what they're starting to do is transition more to the Disney Plus and the television, which I've been enjoying the Mandalorian actually quite a bit. I think it's really well done. I highly recommend you watch that. Check it out. And there's 6 episodes right now.
I
overall,
really
I think,
want to.
Yeah. I think if anyone were to take over Disney, I think anyone would take over or LucasArts or Lucasfilm and Star Wars franchise, I think Disney's the one to do it. So I think they're doing an okay job with it. I really actually liked Solo, which I know didn't do so hot in the theaters, but I actually really enjoyed that. And Rogue One is actually my favorite of the new movies. Rogue One's my most favorite of them all.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, granted, like, I know for me personally, if Disney came to me and said, we're going to give you like $4.5 billion to basically go away, I'd be like, yeah, sure, that's your baby now. I've done what I can.
Right.
I mean, granted, like, I could say that George Lucas is somewhat of a genius, because I mean, I can't remember whether it was a TV special or a documentary that I saw on Star Wars. I mean, granted, if you're going to give me anything on Star Wars, because I'm a big documentary guy, I'll watch a documentary on Star Wars, no problem, because I'm just a big fan of documentaries, and I love like behind the scenes little tidbits and like how this came to be and what happened here.
Sure.
But I remember seeing something where George Lucas, and I suppose this is where his genius comes in, is where I think he said that he knocked his director fee down to like $150,000, but he negotiated like where he would keep all the merchandising rights.
Right.
I just thought that was fantastic, because I mean, like, think about it. Star Wars has its hand in everything now, right? Like, you can't turn around without seeing anything Star Wars. And
right.
I just thought that was genius. Granted, like, some people maybe not, but you can't knock what the guy did with like what he created and basically what he's done with it for 40 some odd years.
Right.
Is there like, do you have a character that really sticks out to you within the franchise?
That's a good question. There's a lot of characters I actually enjoy. I like Yoda a lot. I like Boba Fett. I'm really actually connecting with this Nando character in Mandalorian quite a bit, this new show. I think he's a really cool character. Yeah, it's hard to like kind of pinpoint one particular character I like, because it kind of depends on the movie, to be honest with you. So I really like Yoda in the original movies, but he's not as, I don't like him as much in the prequels, for example. So it's kind of depends on the film, to be quite honest.
I mean, fair point. I suppose it depends who's in the director or like production chair, right?
Right.
And it just depends, I guess, on what the conglomerate, whoever it happens to be, whether it's Lucasfilm or Disney now, what they want to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that a lot of people, I mean, you can rag on the prequels all you want, but I know that a lot of the new films all you want, but I know a lot of people are happy to see like J.J. Abrams involved with the franchise now and what he's doing. So
he brought back the Star Trek, did the movies and did a pretty good job with the new Star Trek films. So, he's a lucky guy to have hands in both.
Yeah, I mean, granted, and I'll admit this too, but like I haven't seen any of the new Star Trek films either, so I've got a lot of catching up to do anyway.
Yeah, you do.
I'm more of a you know what it is? I think, well, I mean, I know that we're gonna get off topic a little bit, but with Star Trek, like, what do you call it? The Next Generation is my favorite incarnation of the franchise. Like, I loved the Next Generation. Maybe it's because my parents loved it. I don't know. Like, I know my dad was a huge Trekkie, and that's where I get it from. So, but Picard's the guy for me. I know that a lot of people will say Shatner, and some might even say, like, Scott Bakula or any of the other captains, but I'd say that Picard's my guy. What would a typical day for you be like? In terms, like, say you're gonna put a video up on like your Star Wars Not 77 channel, right? What would a typical day be like with you in terms of like producing content for that channel at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of depends. First thing is to kind of figure out what I'm going to talk about. So whether it's talk about a new item I picked up that's Star Wars related, or maybe a Star Wars subject like my thoughts on the latest trailer or on the latest movie, etc. First have to come up with a topic. And I don't write any scripts in any of my episodes. You probably could tell that. I just, sit in front of the camera and just talk. So I don't spend too much time into Editing, I edit a little bit, but I don't spend too much time. So it doesn't take me too much time. I have a full-time job and family and other things, obligations too. So I don't have time to sit behind a computer and edit a bunch. I just, sit in front of a camera and talk.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, I'm the same way because I work in radio, television, and media when I'm not doing this show. And I don't know whether it's the background that I have, but, like, I'm very much, if you're going to give me a script, I'm basically going to throw it out. Mm-hmm. Just give me bullet points and I'll hit those. And even with this show, it's like, okay, I know what I want to say. I know who my guest is. I've done my homework a little bit. Let's just get to talking and let's just have a good old-fashioned conversation and a good time. But is there an episode of yours, say, on your Star Wars Not 77 channel that sticks out to you?
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I have to go look and see. Nothing really comes to mind, to be honest.
Do you have anything that's do you have anything that's coming up on that channel that you're working on now?
I really enjoyed my times at Star Wars Celebration, which is a convention that they hold every other year, and I think those videos are a lot of fun to do, to walk around the convention floor and filming the cool footage and the panels. I mean, those have been a lot of fun. As far as future videos go, I'm going to definitely be talking about my thoughts on Episode 9. I've gotten some really cool figures for the holidays I'm going to talk about as well for Star Wars. But mainly I guess the next one will be about next week, about the Episode 9 coming out.
Are you planning on going to see it opening day or no?
I am. Yeah, I'll be actually going to see it on Thursday. I got tickets already. Yep.
Oh, so you're going to the midnight showing then?
Yeah, it's weird. They actually play it much earlier. It's like in the afternoon, evening. I don't know how they get away with it, but maybe since it's playing on the East Coast, they kind of release it early here on the West Coast. But yeah, I'm like a 7:00 showing on Thursday night. So
I tell you, you're a brave man. Because I made this vow years ago that I'd never go see a movie, even if I really wanted to see it. I'd never see it opening day. Just because, I'm.
Well, it makes things easier now that they have seat assignments.
Right? Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Before it was like you had to fight for your own seat, but now they have seat assignments. It's actually, I've seen every Star Wars movie other than the original movies opening night, even Episode 1.
I see. With anybody that does that, I'd still be like, they're brave. You clearly have more bravery than I do. But I just, because I think a buddy and I, and since we're talking Disney and they own Marvel, like a buddy and I went to see Captain Marvel opening day.
Okay.
And I said, there's no way I'm going after 5:00 in the afternoon. Right. There's just no way that I'm going after 5:00. So, we have to either get, an 11 a.m. show or, one of the early afternoons. But because I know that after 5:00, it's going to be Zoo.
The Zoo, right.
Right. And, obviously he knows because we've been friends, 16 years or whatever.
Sure.
He knows how I am, so it's just yeah, no problem. We'll catch an afternoon show, and it was great still. But I just, again, anybody that goes to anything on opening day, I'm yeah,
right.
They like crowds. I don't. You guys are brave, and you are a rare bunch.
Thank you.
But you mentioned earlier that you grew up sort of with the Star Wars figures because your two older brothers. Where did you grow up, actually?
I grew up in the Seattle area in Washington, and I've lived there for a while pretty much through high school. Junior year, I moved down to Phoenix, where I live now. So.
And then, that's one hell of a move, though, right? Because I know that it rains a lot. Yeah. It's somewhat rainy and cold in Washington.
Yeah, it is different climate for sure. I mean, Seattle it's overcast more than anything else. It obviously gets rain, but it's more trickle, it just doesn't downpour.
Yeah.
So there's Chicago, Miami. There's a lot of other cities that get more inches of rainfall a year than Seattle does. It's just more overcast, which is I think the biggest thing.
Fair, but you're in Phoenix now, and I tell you what, if you got a spare room at any point, I'm up in Canada, and it's cold 10 months out of the year, so I'd come down no problem. But
this time of year it's the 60s. It's pretty nice.
But you mentioned the figures earlier. Did you ever, did you ever get a chance to have any of the Kenner figures? Because I know they had the license to the toy line back in the day.
That's the one I grew up on. It was the original, what they call now, vintage line of Star Wars figures, was the original Star Wars figures. So I have all but a few, and I'm missing maybe one or two figures to have a whole complete set of the original line of Kenner. I'm missing a few. Like in '85, they released like some figures based on 2 cartoons during the time. It was it's droids and Ewoks, and those figures now are worth a lot. Like even like a loose figure will go for hundreds of dollars. So I'm missing a few of those figures, but yeah, all the other figures I own. Some of them are still I have them on card back still.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are loose. I actually would play with as a kid.
Would you? I mean, you mentioned that like some of the figures that you're missing, they go for hundreds of, if not thousands of dollars. Would you ever drop that kind of money on a figure just to have it?
No, it's the same thing with games, right? Video games, same kind of thing. No, the answer is no. I don't. First off, I don't super deep pockets to spend that much money on figures. But I might trade for some things and whatnot, buy some extras and spares. But I don't like to spend a ton of money on old school toys.
So how do you feel about the Star Wars video games? Because I know for me, like I've tried for 30 years to get into Star Wars, and thankfully through this miniseries, I'm getting a bit of I'm gaining an appreciation. But like
I haven't played the latest one, to be honest, but I have I have a handful of them growing up playing. X-Wing series is great for the PC. Super Star Wars series trilogy for the Super Nintendo is great. Really highly recommend that. Battlefront is really good as well. That series is really fantastic. There's a lot of good Star Wars games, just like there's a lot of bad Star Wars games, like Star Wars Chess and Star Wars. There's like a Star Wars fighting game that's kind of like Tekken for the PS1. I can't think of the name of it. Battle of Tashi or whatever it was called, but that's not very good either. So you get all these different genres of Star Wars games, but for the most part, they're good.
See, everybody says that, and like that's your thing, and good for you. Because I remember trying to get into it. Like I had a Nintendo 64 growing up, and I think it was Battlefield that was on the 64.
Well, there was several. I mean, Shadow of the Empire is really good. The Rogue One or Rogue Squadron. There's 2. There's Rogue Squadron 1, which came out for the N64. There's Star Wars Racer, which is based on Episode 1. I think those are the 3 Star Wars games that came out for the system.
I think it was Shadows of the Empire that my dad had picked up for me.
And there's Battle for Naboo, I think, was another one. Yeah, there's 4. Yeah, Shadow of the Empire is actually really good. It hasn't aged very well controls-wise, just because the controller, there's only one analog stick, so a lot of first-person games or third-person games haven't really aged very well control-wise, but it's a really fun game.
Well, I remember him telling me the day that he brought it home that he's like, you're probably not going to like it. I said, well, why would you say that? He said, because you've never been a big fan of Star Wars. And you know what? He was absolutely right.
That's funny.
And, kudos to him. I mean, if he were still around, he'd be 70 now. But, like,
wow.
He's just like, you're not going to like it because you're more of a Star Trek guy. And he was absolutely bang on the money. Like, but which ones did you really enjoy in terms of, like, the games? Like, you mentioned the ones on the Super Nintendo. You mentioned...
Yeah, Dark Forces for the PC, which is a first-person one. Really good. There's, Shadow of the Empire is up there. X-Wing series is up there. The Super Star Wars trilogy for the Super Nintendo is really good. I like Battlefront. I like Knights of the Old Republic for Xbox, the original Xbox. Both 1 and 2 are really good. There's so many good Star Wars games out there.
And, I mean, with anything like the Star Wars franchise, it has licenses in sort of every market. Like, they can... I mean, it's a license to print money these days anyway. They'll put Star Wars on a dog toy and, like, people will laugh it up, You mentioned that you had kids and a family and all. I'm assuming that you're getting your kids into Star Wars as much as you are?
I am. I've tried getting them to watch the movies. They don't have their 6, so they don't have the attention span to sit through any movies much in general, if it's not like a cartoon or something, But so one of my sons actually is really liking The Mandalorian. He's really enjoying that because of Baby Yoda. But yeah, I try to get him into the movies. I haven't quite showed him all the movies yet. I want to give him old enough to really enjoy it. I don't want to force it upon them, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you just, like baby steps, if you will.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. They'll like the cartoons and stuff like that. They'll enjoy the Clone Wars and and things like that. But as far as movies, I'm kind of waiting till it's the right moment where they can appreciate it.
Okay. Did you enjoy the Clone Wars at all?
I I do. I like the series. There's also Rebels, and there's other series as well. They're okay. Yeah, I mean they're not my favorite series certainly, but yeah, they're enjoyable.
Here's a loaded question. I don't know. It might be loaded to you because it has been to some of my guests that have been on this show before. But do you think Yoda is the greatest teacher?
I think as far as we know, yes. I say that because there might be someone out there that's maybe better, but I don't know. I mean, as far as I know, as far as when it comes to Jedi teachings, I do think Yoda is definitely the one you would go to for sure.
And that's a fair point. And as we wrap up here, if you could spend a day, say, with anybody, any actor, anyone in production, just shadow somebody for a day on set, who would it be?
Oh wow! Just in general?
Yeah, it could be anybody.
Man, that's a great. I'd love to shout out Harrison Ford. That'd be a lot of fun. I think he's just an amazing actor, and the movies has been amazing. Wow. Yeah, I would probably say Harrison Ford comes to mind for sure. I'm sure there's others I just can't think of right now, but yeah, it'd be fun. It would be fun to shout out any A+ actor in general, right? I mean, I think definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned Harrison Ford. Like for me, because I saw Air Force One probably a couple weeks ago for the first time in years.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
Just to be like a fly on the wall.
I know, right?
During that production, I would have been like, that would have been perfect for me. But
yeah, I mean, that series, the Indiana Jones series, the Star Wars series, I mean, he's been American Graffiti, he's done a lot.
Yeah, like he's been there everywhere.
Yeah. Everywhere, yeah.
He's built quite the career for himself. But
yeah, for sure.
John, I appreciate the fact that you wanted to come on the show, and it was a pleasure to talk Star Wars with you. So thank you for this.
Thank you, Leigh. Yeah, it's been fun, man. Thank you so much for including me. Appreciate the invite.
Very and briefly before I let you go, where can people find you if you're on social media?
For sure. So you mentioned a couple of them before. For Star Wars related, I have a YouTube channel called Star Wars Net 77, reference to the year that the original Star Wars movie came out, 1977. And that's a YouTube channel. I'm on Twitter and Facebook on there. If you're into video games, we talked some about that today. Gamester81, also on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I'm part owner of a gaming company, indie game company called Collector Vision Games. So we create new games for classic consoles, as well as we have a new City Hunter and the Curse of the Mayan, which is out for both Switch and Steam currently. That's called Collector Vision Games, so you can find me on there. And lastly, I run a gaming event here in the Phoenix area called Game On Expo. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And that's just kind of like Comic-Con for gamers is the best way to explain it. So it's kind of an opportunity once a year to get people together and celebrate gaming, whether it's tabletop to arcade to esports to retro gaming, all the above.
And you guys are growing constantly year after year after year. So if you're in the Phoenix area, check these guys out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, so we're growing. We just celebrated our 5th year this year. 2020 will be year 6. We grew 40% last year, and we've been growing double digits every year since it started. So I've been very blessed and fortunate. It's a ton of work, a lot of money. And on top of that, I have my day job and family and all that good stuff too. So right now it's a hobby still. It's just for fun, but it's definitely awesome to see it grow.
You're a busy, popular man, John. I tell you.
Well, I appreciate it.
How you find the time to do all of it, I don't know. You've probably mastered the art of cloning yourself.
Yeah, the Clone Wars.
There you go. But I appreciate the fact that you wanted to come on the show and talk Star Wars. It was a real pleasure to have you on. And anytime that you want to come back and just shoot the breeze, my inbox is always on, my door is always open, and there is always going to be a spot for you here. I should mention before we let you go, John is a former co-host of the All Gen Gamers podcast, which is basically where I found all you guys, like yourself.
Oh, that's awesome.
Jason Heine, Jason Lindsay, a.k.a. Metal Jesus. Johnny Millennium and
Pete Dorr,
Pete Dorr, Ben Rowland. If you guys want to check out his former podcast, The All Gen Gamers, go to allgengamers.com as well, and any of his former co-hosts. I will post those links in the description, and you can follow John there as well. But John, thank you once again for doing the show and wanting to come on. It was a real pleasure. And of course, there's always a spot for you here if you ever want to come back.
Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate that, man. It means a lot. So it was fun. Thank you for including me. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. to everyone, and thank you very much.
Same to you. And if you ever want to come up here, I'm sure that we can pull out the cot, and I'll make room for you, brother. And if you've got a spare room in, if you've got a spare room in Phoenix in February,
Yeah, there you go. All right, Leigh, have a great weekend, man. Thank you so much.
You too, brother.
Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Well, there it is. There you have it. There you go. My interview with John Lester, a.k.a. Gamester81, a.k.a. NEStalgiaholic, and most importantly, because this is a continuation, or this was a continuation, of the Star Wars miniseries right here on the Beats and Speaks podcast, Star Wars Nut 77. John, thank you once again for coming on the Beats and Speaks podcast. It was a real pleasure getting to talk to you about all things Star Wars, from how excited you are for The Rise of Skywalker, where your fandom started, what you think of the Disney takeover, and everything and anything in between. To find out everything there is to know about my guest, John Lester, Gamester81, aka NEStalgiaholic, and Star Wars Nut 77, visit his official website at Gamester81.com. Those links are in the description. Follow him on social media. I will post as many links as I can find in the description below. Now that wraps up another episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. Thank you all for listening. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Find me, yours truly, Leigh Dickey, at my official website, LeighTDickey.com. Follow me on social media at LeighTDickey. Find us on YouTube as well under Leigh Dickey TV. If you'd like to be a guest on a future episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast, please do email me at LeighTDickey, that's LeighTDickey at gmail.com, and we can set something up so you and I can have a good old-fashioned conversation, and you can find yourself and hear yourself right here on a future episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast. This wraps up another episode. Thank you all for listening. Again, please comment, like, share, and subscribe. Like and leave us reviews on your favorite podcast app and player of choice, as well as rate us 5 stars, because that helps us climb in the rankings. But until next week, until next Friday at midnight Eastern Time, this is your host, Leigh Dickey. This has been another episode of the Beats and Speaks podcast, and we will see you all and talk to you all next time. Peace.
Leigh T.